is Shauna Alvarez, and I'm the executive chef here at America's Grow Row, and I'm coming to you from our teaching kitchen on the farm in Pittstown, New Jersey. We are making a mushroom and meat sauce today. This meat sauce and spaghetti is part of our ComMITT Kit program that we are so pleased to collaborate with the Flemington Area Food Pantry, ShopRite, and the Partnership for Health here in Hunterdon County to bring meal kits to clients of the Flemington Area Food Pantry each month. This month's meal is a family favorite. I grew up eating it as a kid, my husband did, we make it for our kids, and I have so many friends and colleagues that grew up eating meat sauce pretty regularly. And so I thought it would be a good one to work on this month. And I'm not changing it too much. I'm just gonna sort of bump up the amount of produce that we add to it so that we can have a variety of nutrition, and you can sort of see the different ways that you can incorporate produce into a meal like this. A friend of mine at ShopRite, Susan, one of the dietitians, she would refer to this meal as sort of a meat extender meal, and I really like that idea. The idea is not to change up what you eat too much, but just see where you can add vegetables. And the vegetables I'm adding today are pretty traditional vegetables in a recipe like this. All we're going to do is just add a little bit more of them than you might be used to having. And the bulk of it is going to come from mushrooms, and mushrooms are a very common ingredient in a sauce like this, but instead of slicing them up, I'm going to dice them quite finely. And that just comes from personal experience. My kids don't think they like mushrooms, but they eat them a lot in dishes like this because I just dice them up really finely, and they sort of take on the texture of the meat and the flavoring of the sauce, and don't really, come through that strongly. So I love that they get them that way. We're gonna add onions, carrots, and celery, which is pretty traditional in certain versions of this sauce, canned tomato paste, and canned tomatoes. So the one note I want to say today is that I'm using ground turkey, about a pound. Whatever ground meat you have, that is fine. And you can even use a combination. Ground beef, ground turkey, ground chicken, ground pork, ground veal, any or all of those combined will make a delicious sauce. And you can play with the proportion of meat to vegetables that you like the most. The recipe as written is sort of definitely heavier on the vegetables than on the meat, but if you're just starting out on this journey, just try adding a few more vegetables than you're used to adding. And as you sort of move forward, you can add more and more vegetables as your family and you adjust. So let's get started. I'm going to start by showing you how to cut all of the produce that we're going to use today, and then we'll start cooking. All right, let's start by prepping our vegetables. So if you've watched these videos before, you'll know that I'm always trying to reduce two things in my kitchen. One is food waste, and the other is the amount of time I spend cooking. And for this recipe, I'll show you how I'm going to do that. The first thing is with these carrots, I'm not going to peel them. They are in really good shape. I've scrubbed them and they're delicious. So I'm going to save time by skipping the peeling, and then instead of those peels going into the garbage or my compost bin, they're going to end up in the sauce. And then this celery is another good example. You'll see it's been in my fridge for a couple of weeks and it's got kind of wilty. Instead of throwing it away, I'm just going to cut off the ends that are starting to go a little bit brown. I'm going to dice it all up, including the leaves, and it's going to go into this sauce. Now, if you were doing a dish with celery that really relied on its crunch, you could put these stalks in a sort of jar of cold water, and they crisp up pretty nicely. But these sort of soggy stems are great for a sauce like this. They're going to bring all of the nutrition and the flavor that celery brings to the party, and we won't waste them just because they're not exactly pristine right now. The other tip I wanted to give you today about produce is how to clean mushrooms, and this is a good tip if you have kids in the kitchen. The best way to clean mushrooms is not to submerge them in water or to rinse them in the sink, because mushrooms are like little sponges and they soak up the water that they get washed in. For a sauce like this, it's not really that big of a deal because adding that water to your dish isn't really going to do much to it. But if you're trying to saute mushrooms or stir fry them, you want them to brown. And if they soak up a lot of water, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. So this is a good practice to get into when you have mushrooms. And it is a really, really good job for the littlest kids in the kitchen. You get a damp paper towel or kitchen towel, and you just simply wipe the mushrooms off, getting as much dirt as you can off, and that way they don't soak up too much water, but you know you're getting the dirt off. And this is the perfect job for kids, that you don't want to watch, have to watch over with a knife, 3, 4, 5 years old. And it is truly very helpful. So that's always good, you know, when you can give your kids a task in the kitchen that lets them feel empowered, lets them be a part of the meal making, but also actually really helps you. All right, so that's how we're gonna clean the mushroom. I'm gonna clean the rest of it, and I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna dice up all of the vegetables. Our goal for cutting up all of these vegetables today is to make them roughly the same size so that they cook at roughly the same rate and they take on a similar texture in the dish. And for me, that's because sometimes I have to sort of disguise the vegetables that are in dishes like this if I want to add more. So cutting them smaller makes it easier to do that. If your kids like these kinds of vegetables, if you like these kinds of vegetables, they can be a little chunkier. The other option is for things like carrots in particular, and I've shown you this in a few other dishes, is you can shred them with a box grater, and that makes them sort of disappear into the dish even more. But today we're just going to use a knife, and I'll show you how I'm going to chop them up. Well, let's get ready to cook. We have all of our vegetables all chopped up roughly the same size: mushrooms, onions, celery, and carrots. And I have about a pound of meat right here. I have a pot of water on to boil, because I'm going to do this at the same time. But one note about trying to get ahead. This can be done in advance. The cutting up of vegetables is one thing that can be done in advance. Much like you see in the grocery store, those little pre-cut packs of carrots and onions. Like, you could do that for yourself at home if you have the time. You could also make this sauce earlier in the day and then have it ready for dinner. You could also make and freeze this sauce ahead of time and pull it out to defrost, which is a wonderful feature of a sauce like this. Okay, to get started, we're going to add a couple tablespoons of olive oil to the pan. We're going to add all of our vegetables and a little bit of salt to get them going. And after a few minutes, we'll add the meat and then the canned goods and the spices, and then we'll let it simmer. And that's a really good sort of basic technique for making a sauce like this. Okay, I have a big pot over medium-low heat, and I have a few tablespoons of olive oil in there. So we're going to start by adding all of our vegetables. And you can use whatever pan is big enough for this recipe, basically. You'll hear it sizzling right away. The salt is going to help provide flavor, but it's also going to help bring out some of the moisture in the vegetables. These vegetables have been cooking for about 5-10 minutes, and they are softer, and the carrots are a little brighter orange. The mushrooms have gotten much smaller. The onions are clear. So those are all indicators that we're at a good spot to add some of the other things. So what we're going to do next is add the ground meat. You're going to use the side of your spoon or spatula to break up the meat into smaller pieces. To include the vegetables, you mix the vegetables in to make a good mixture. And then once you get that going, you're going to add a little bit more, just a tiny little bit more salt. We're going to add salt a few different times, just a little bit at a time, to add layers of flavor. This is a good time time to add some of your other seasonings since we're using dried seasonings. Dried seasonings are a little different than fresh in that they need some hot oil or hot liquid of some kind to sort of release their flavors. And when you're adding dried seasonings like this, it's really to taste. We're going to add some now, and then when you finish cooking and you're getting ready to eat, you can taste again and add some more. Dried spices are wonderful because they don't have any added salt, any sugar, so they're appropriate for all diets, and they just add a lot of really good flavor, which is, you know, the most important thing when you're cooking. So we're going to mix that all in. And you can even see from this mixture here that it still looks like it's almost all vegetables, and that's wonderful. It's sort of like, this recipe is sort of 2-to-1 vegetables to protein to meat, and you can, like I said at the beginning, you can play with that ratio however you would like. So I can tell by looking at this that the meat is starting to cook through, it's less pink. So you're going to add this tomato paste, you're just going to get a spoon, and you're going to put the whole can in. And I love using tomato paste because it is shelf stable. If you look at the ingredients, it's really only just tomato paste on the back. Sometimes it has citric acid, which helps it tastes a little bit more flavorful. But there's no salt, no sugar, and it's a ton of flavor. And a really good tip when using tomato paste is if you don't have canned tomatoes or fresh tomatoes to put to the sauce, if you add a can of tomato paste and some water, you're going to get a lot of that tomato flavor. So if I was making this sauce at home and I went into my pantry and realized I didn't have any crushed tomatoes, I would add the paste and then some chicken stock or some water until it was the texture I wanted. And that would be very similar to the end result we're going to have. You can even tell the color has changed so much. Tomato paste is a wonderful ingredient. I think it's underutilized. You can get it in these cans, which are about 99 cents each, sometimes less when they're on sale. You can also get them in tubes, which I really like too, because you can just add a little bit at a time. It's a really inexpensive way to add a ton of flavor, and you do get a lot of the benefits of tomatoes, specifically the lycopene, which is a great nutrient. And then we're going to add one 24-ounce can, or was it 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. These are no salt added. Use what you have on hand. And I'm going to go fill both of these cans with water to rinse out all the extra. I'm going to add that water with the extra into this sauce. I'm going to turn it down to low and let it cook. Okay, so you can see now there's a lot of liquid in here. I added a bunch of water as well to rinse out those cans to get all that flavor and all the good stuff. And I'm going to turn this way down and let it cook until I'm ready to serve it. So I have a couple hours in the kitchen today, so I'm going to let this go for a little while. And then when it's all done, I will show you a nice beautiful bowl of spaghetti and meat sauce. So I'm back. The sauce has been cooking for about an hour, and I've made myself a bowl of whole wheat pasta with the meat sauce, and I've topped it with Parmesan cheese, and I'm really excited to dig into this today for lunch. And then tomorrow my kids are going to eat this, my family's going to eat this. So I really hope you enjoy this meal. We welcome feedback, so please reach out to us. Any of our platforms at America's Grow Row, our Instagram, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or you can reach out to me directly. You can find my contact information on the website. Thanks a lot always to ShopRite, Flemington Area Food Pantry, and Partnership for Health to make this program happen. And I'll see you next month. Bye.